Hi, this is Sugey Piedra, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
Thank you once again for tuning into the Matt Balaker podcast. Please do me a big favor and like, subscribe, and encourage 7 to 14 of your closest acquaintances to do the same thing. I'm super pumped for today's guest because for more than 20 years, she has been working in the tax preparation and wealth management industry. She's the host of Tax Talk with HeyHey. Please welcome Sugey Piedra to the program. How are you doing, Sugey?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Matt. Really happy to be here.
Well, it's been a few weeks in the making, Sugey, but I'm really enthused that we were fortunate enough to get you on the program. And your people let me know that you're the child of an immigrant. So am I. So I want to get a little bit of background. Like, where did you grow up, Sugey?
So I grew up here in Azusa, California. And yes, my parents, migrated over from Mexico to the United States at a really young age, but they actually met and married here in Los Angeles. And my dad ended up with a relative here in Azusa, worked in Azusa for over 30 years. And we really never left our 4-block radius, I guess you could say. And one of, I did a reel on it and it kind of took off on TikTok because I said my dad would only take me to 4 places. Like it was El Pollo Loco, it was In-N-Out, it was McDonald's, or this little Mexican joint in Azusa. Okay, remember, he doesn't leave Azusa, right? And so people started commenting that, their parents would do the same thing. And now I find it that I love to go out and explore. So if you ask me, let's go to dinner, I'll probably pick somewhere in the OC or LA or somewhere where I have to drive. This last weekend on Sunday, I drove to Solvang, which was 2.5, 3-hour drive. And we had dinner, walked a couple blocks, and then we came home. So definitely don't stay in the 4-block radius that my parents raised me in.
Feel free to explore. So I love that. So you drove to Solvang. Did you have a chance to see the little horses?
I did not. I got there too late. Like I said, it was just a spontaneous thing. So I got there a little late. Things were starting to close down. Restaurants stay a little open, but shops start to close down. We missed some of the trolleys. So again, it was just this thing where I was like, do you guys want to go have dinner at, my son and my daughter like 3 hours, Mom? I was like, yeah, it's about 2.5, but with traffic, it'll be 3.
Well, you're the gasoline company's best friend. Thank you for keeping those people employed. So growing up, you're also a SoCal native.
Yeah.
You didn't leave this 4-mile radius. What was your first quote unquote real job? Or not even, like, what was your first job?
You're going to laugh, but it was El Pollo Loco. Why? Because we ate there once a month or, whatever it was. And so I didn't really have any other way of applying anywhere else. I didn't know much. And so it was, I love my upbringing now that I look back and reflect and see how spoiled my kids are, right? Or this whole generation.
Yeah.
Or this whole generation.
Hard, but our kids, they have it easy. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was cute. We knew when payday was because that's when he would take us out to eat. And we would get to pick one of those 4 places. And it's because they were all within a few blocks of our home. And so my first job was to work at El Pollo Loco, where, I had visited to have dinner every month. And so it's funny that was my very first job. So people laugh when I really tell them I've never really, now that I'm older, I do go out and explore. But when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of knowledge of knowing where things were or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wish every person had a job in food service. I can't imagine a better kind of entry in the workforce. You see people at their worst, and it's also fun, but you have to think on the fly. You have to learn accounting, customer service.
The rush hour and people's moods. When people are hungry, they're a whole different person.
Yeah, I'm sweet and down to earth when I haven't eaten, but I know other people can get kind of hangry. Um,
Yeah, for
I know
sure.
my wife would have a very different opinion. So, what are some of the early skills that you learned from your El Pollo Loco job?
Well, I think some of the early skills I learned were from more of helping my parents. My parents had a language barrier, right? They didn't know English, they didn't speak it very well. They were used to staying in their own little area, familiar places. But I had to not teach, I had to learn how to translate really hard documents that had to do with adult stuff, like how to refinance a house, how when they bought their first house, and electric bills and balancing checkbooks at like 13 and 14. And so translating documents and helping them is what showed me how to learn budgets and learn, where the money goes and how much things really cost and how much my parents made and all that other stuff. So I had a really good financial understanding at a very young age. And then which led me to my career, I think, being able to do taxes for them and reading those documents that, are complex for us as adults. Imagine as a younger person trying to figure this stuff out. But I took this interest in all number stuff and all household things. And I simplified it because I had to translate it. I had to translate it to somebody in a different language that didn't have a whole big understanding of what all this stuff was in the first place. So I think that's what now in my business today makes me so unique and the clients love, is because I use terms and I simplify tax documents that people find so scary and complex, and I make them feel so easy and simple.
Oh, that's an incredibly valuable skill. I mean, the IRS or tax language, it's kind of its own lexicon. I
Yes,
mean, it's not everyday speak. It's
right,
confusing, and then if you have to then translate that to a different language, you have to really have a deep understanding yourself to be able to
right.
simplify it. So, I mean, you hit on a lot of important points, but what motivated you to actually make a career of this?
Just like any other kid, now that I have, adult teenagers, I realize they fight your parents on everything, right? So my mom would always tell me like I was good at this, but I'd be like, I don't want to do taxes, those are boring. And I always had this vision of me wanting to just be out and explore. And, again, I think because I was so confined. And I would always find ways to get myself in trouble. And so I always felt that, taxes was not the way for me to make a career out of it. But I did like it as a side hustle because I always got paid. Every tax season, I had money because people, once I started to do my parents' taxes, they told grandma, they told uncle, they told cousin. And so all of a sudden I had a little business kind of in a sense, of people paying me a couple $100 just to do their tax returns. And so I always saw it as a side hustle. Uh, Not until I was about 23, I had my son. And so I was like, okay, I'm an adult now. I'm a mom. I have to like really make a business. I mean, not make a living, right? And so I got a job at I put school the back burner, right? And I went and I got a job and I started working at a CPA's office as the receptionist. They took a liking on me. They felt that I was really smart and that I kind of knew this stuff. And so they didn't really know that I had been preparing returns. They just knew that I kind of knew it wasn't hard for me to understand their language. And so I was like, well, yeah, because I've been doing these by hand, filling out the forms, following the path, the pamphlet said to do this. And then they're like, wow, you have a really basic understanding of tax. We would love to teach you more. And so I said, okay, it include a raise. And so that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to support my family. And so I started to really learn more. I got my license for tax preparation. And so that's where my career started. It was 23, where somebody else is kind of guiding me and telling me what I need to be doing. And, you know, maybe fast forward, I don't know, I want to say 10 years. I was probably in my mid 30s when I'm like, I hate taxes. I don't want to do taxes. I mean, you give up a lot, and that's what people don't realize. As a tax preparer, this industry is very, I call it broken now that I have a better understanding of it. It's volume based, right? And so in order for a tax preparer to really make a good living, you got to do volumes of returns because you're charging a couple $100 per return. And so you got to see, hundreds of people in order to make a good living. And what does that do? It takes your time.
Right.
And with that time, I would always have to kiss my kids goodbye for tax season. And I'd be gone for the first 4 months of the year because I was, working tremendous amount of hours in order for me to make a good living for them. And so I was mid-30s and I said, I don't want to do this. I'm tired. I don't want to continue to do this. It's taking a toll on me and my family. So I stepped away for a year or so. And then I realized that I missed it, that I really did love it, but I wanted it to be different. And then that's when my new challenge came in, is how can I make what I do different and more enjoyable for me and better for the clients? And I did more of a financial background. I went back to school, certificates, and I learned finance. I learned how to help clients make money. And so I had an experience with taxes, and now I was learning finance. And so when I merged the two, I started my business as a tax planning strategist. So I learned how to make the return look the way we want it to look, all legal, all everything. But instead of Uncle Sam keeping the money, we make the money work for us. And so it became something that now I'm very proud of, and I'm happy. Clients see the difference in their taxes and their results and their finances. And so now I control my time, and it's just a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, you control your time and you're doing something that's more aligned with your interests. And I think that makes work easier. How did you market your how did you market your business differently when you were doing this tax strategy versus, simply being a tax preparer?
Yes. Well, my business is around 6 years old. In the beginning, I didn't know what to call it. I kept saying I was a tax preparer, but when clients come and meet with me, they say, you're different. And and I'm like, I know, but I don't know I can't just say, hey, I'm a different type of tax preparer. Like the marketing doesn't flow, right?
No. It doesn't roll off the tongue that easily.
But I didn't know how else to really figure it out. So it took me a little while to find my people. And so finally, after I always tell people, Google is great, but if you don't know what to Google, then how do you find what you're looking for? And so eventually I found a couple of networking groups within our accounting world that did something similar to with what I did. And then they led me to other groups and so on and so forth. So right now I'm very happy to be part of these group of CPAs, accountants, enrolled agents that put strategy and consulting behind every tax return that they do. And that's what it's called, tax planning. So tax planning is you're planning and you're being proactive with your taxes before they're even due. So I project, I help them estimate. And so when we get to, right now we're in 2024, so we're working on 2024. 2023 is the past. There's very little you can do to change what happened in 2023. So let's focus on what we can still control, which is 2024. So if you come to me and you're like, hey, my business is rocking and rolling and I'm making all this money, how much am I going to owe in taxes? I'm like, well, you're going to owe X amount of dollars in taxes, but what if we do this strategy? What if we do this? And what if we do that? If you can do your homework and accomplish all of these tasks before December, that means that your tax liability will be cut in half. So instead of Uncle Sam keeping your money, you get to keep your money. And clients love that because now they go out and they have direction. They know if they're going to buy real estate or rental properties, which ones to buy, where to buy them. They have a very clear understanding of what they're trying to do to accomplish that goal, which is save taxes. So very different.
Yeah, I mean, there are a handful of people, Sugey, that want to give as much as they can to the IRS, but I think that's pretty rare.
Look, I'm all about paying taxes. We're in a country that's built off of taxes, so I get it. But I think we can all give our fair share and then control the rest so we can continue to build wealth with it. At the end of the day, Uncle Sam's still going to take their fair share. So There's nothing you can do about that.
Oh yeah, no, Uncle Sam's not going out of business. And I think like flying up 30,000 feet, it's important. I mean, business owners are good at whatever they do. And
Mhm.
so the more money they have, the better they are at their business. And that
Yes.
means if you're in business for a while, you're probably out competing someone. And that means you can not only grow your business, but employ more people and
Right.
just it's just effective resource allocation. And
For
I
sure.
think, and people like to joke about like fair share and stuff. It's not just a matter of splitting the pie so it's equitable in someone's
Right.
definition. It's also important to think, where are these resources going and in
Mhm.
what hands are they in the best use? And I would
Right.
argue that with entrepreneurs or with people who have a subject area of expertise,
Right.
that the money should go there.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, obviously not all entrepreneurs are going to be as successful. There's a lot of hiccups that happen. I've had to go through a lot of self-development to really understand how to make the business grow. You can't spend everything you make. You've got to reinvest into your business. Quite a bit. Marketing is not cheap, and but it's a necessary. Now I look at it as not as an expense, but as a necessary investment in order for my business to continue to grow. My education, my coaching, my business coaching. Like I have business coaches. I do a lot of continued education, and all of that costs money. And I
Sure.
tell clients that all the time. I'm like, look, all these cool strategies I present to you, I don't just make them up. I go to all these conferences, I learn, I meet with the right people, and it costs me money to go. So, all of that is an investment now and it's a necessary investment that I put, always on my budget every single year.
And your clients can see a return on your investment. So that's the best
That is.
kind of deal. You work with many small business owners, Sugey. What are some of the most common challenges they face when it comes to running a firm?
I feel for small business owners because they have this dream, this drive to do what they're good at, whether it's making a widget, selling a service, whatever it is. There's a dream, there's a passion behind it. But it's not just about going out there and developing this and selling it and making money. There's a whole background to it, right? Business background that some of these individuals are not familiar with. And that's why their dreams get crushed when they get presented with this huge tax liability bill, when they get penalties and interest and all this stuff because they didn't know or they didn't remember that, there's taxes behind the scenes, there's administrative stuff that has to happen behind the scenes. And so I feel for them because I feel that because books or accounting books, their bookkeeping is not in order, that they're giving way too much to Uncle Sam just because they weren't organized in the beginning. But how can you be when you're chasing this dream and you're so busy and consumed by the business that you don't have time to do the bookkeeping? So what I tell clients all the time is when you're going to start this business, the first thing a lot of people do is go start some sort of corporation, right? But there's things that you have to do and follow through. So right now I'm in the process of developing like a business 101 video series of just telling people, like hand holding them through the process, because I feel that people need to have access to this stuff. Yes, it's available in YouTube and, wherever. But again, if you don't know what to Google or what to look for, then it's hard for you to come across it. But some of the common things I see is a lot of co-mingling. They pay for, and we'll make it simple. They start a business and the business needs to, buy a desk, for example. Well, the business doesn't have money. So they buy the desk with their personal dollars, right? And they buy it on their own credit card or whatever. Well, when it comes to tax time and they're looking at all the business expenses, they totally forgot that they bought the desk with their personal money, right? And so now they didn't get a write-off for it when it's literally a company use, a tool or whatever, and they missed out on that write-off. And now they're having to pay taxes on dollars they truly didn't make because they forgot to write that off. So that's what I see a lot of. I said a desk, but I see all kinds of stuff because in the beginning, you're funding it. And so I tell people, let's simplify your life. You open that business account and you let it borrow money. So transfer, say, $5,000 to that business account. Now buy the desk off of that business account. Now buy that printer off of the business account. Buy whatever you got to buy off of that business account. so that all those expenses don't get missed. They're accounted for, and you get the proper write-offs that you need to get at tax time instead of paying extra taxes on those dollars. So commingling is one of the big ones.
Avoid commingling if you can.
Yeah.
More people, I mean, largely since 2020, have been working at home. How does that change tax preparation?
So it's not that it changed it. There's always been like a home office. I remember maybe back in the 80s, and I wasn't doing taxes. Maybe I was. I don't remember. But I do remember.
After El Pollo Loco, you'd fill out some tax forms.
I just remember when I would work with other CPAs, they'd be like, "Oh, home office, let's stay away from it. It's a big audit risk."
Right.
That's not true. And, we all deserve, if we have our designated office space, we should get a write-off for it. But it didn't change anything. What happened was in 2018, with some of the new IRS codes, they took away the home office deduction for you to take it on the federal level. Still available on the state level in some states. But on the federal level, what they did is if you're a W-2 employee, and that's exactly what happened, a lot of people started to work from home and they were W-2 employees. Well, they now couldn't take a deduction for their home office space. There's no place on the tax return to take a write-off for it. So we knew it should be a deduction, but there's no place to put those type of deductions on the tax return if you were a W-2 employee. So if you were self-employed, then it would still take the same place as a home office. You get the square footage of the space and you take a percentage of, your home expenses and things like that. So, but I definitely encourage people that if you do have a home office, you take it. There's certain expenses that you couldn't do what you do for a living if it wasn't because you have your home office. And so you should be entitled to deduct that.
Good to know. And you brought up an important point, Sugey. That is, many people think of home offices as audit red flags. I'm one of those, and it's not necessarily for any good reason. It's just kind of like
what you heard, right? Somebody must have said it.
I overheard it when I was at an Orange Julius in the 90s or something. But what are some legitimate audit red flags? Like what should people generally avoid if they don't want to have the IRS knocking on their doors?
Yeah, of course. I always tell clients not to fear the IRS. I said, look, the IRS is as scary as they sound, and some people make them sound. You really want to ask when you hear, it's good gossip, right? I tell clients, good gossip always spreads like wildfire, fire. And I go, listen, if the IRS is knocking on someone's door, typically it's because they ignored the 200 letters that they've sent them. You know what I mean? Ask them.
It's not their first encounter.
It's not. Yeah. IRS is not going to just pop in your house. Most of the time you've ignored 100 of the letters that they sent, or they're sitting in a drawer somewhere, And that's why they end up popping up, is because they want to know if you're still alive or something. I don't know. But I tell them, look, if you get an IRS notice, instead of fearing it, let's look at it. Most of the time, you don't understand how many mistakes I find in these IRS notices because they're inaccurate. They don't have the right information. And so that's what they're trying to clear up is, what information do we have? What do you have? Why is there this discrepancy, right? So let's just fix it. And so that's typically what an IRS notice is. But if there is some sort of an audit, typically what causes audits is going to be reporting losses on businesses. The IRS will always say, if you're starting a business, well, we want it to be a producing business. We don't want it to be a business that's taking up your savings or you're charging up your debt over this business. So they either think it's a scam and you're using it to reduce other type of income like W-2 income, or it's a hobby. And so they want to identify that. And so if you show them that you're literally trying to make money, which would include you doing some sort of marketing and networking and investing money in making this business run, and it tanks, okay, great, you can prove that. But then they're going to say, okay, well, shut your doors. Why do you keep pumping money into this thing if it ain't working, right? But
if it's like a year or so, that's one thing. But if
well, 2-3 years is a startup. Kind of, it does happen. You invest in, maybe vehicles, or if you're doing some sort of transportation, whatever it is that you're doing, you're investing in the first couple of years. But if it ain't turning around, this thing is just kind of taking you to the ground, and it needs to stop. So I think that's one of the main audit risks that we have. Sometimes there's silly things that cause audits. And one of the silly things is forgetting that you sold stock somewhere. forgetting that you have some sort of an investment account somewhere. And that became really popular with those apps like Robinhood and Acorn and all that stuff. It's because we open all these accounts, we forget they even exist. And then there's an IRS form floating that got never reported. And so sometimes those things will cause, that discrepancy. And so we just have to report it correctly. And, but it could trigger some sort of an audit.
I totally see how that could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, they might have a special or you make a trade once. You get sold by a meme and you open up a Robinhood account.
Yes. And then we forget we have it. So that happens sometimes for sure.
You mentioned passive income, Sugey, and years ago, I had a goal. I wanted to buy a vending machine because I was in my 20s. It ended up not working out because of my apartment complex. I just couldn't find a place for it. But I thought, all right, that's a pretty manageable way to make money.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of money then. What are some ways that people who aren't Elon Musk or they're not one percenters, how can they start developing some passive income?
There's a lot of ways. Vending machine is a really good business. It does require some work and setup and stuff like that. But understanding that business model, just like the laundromats and, storage units, those are all really cool business setups that if that's your interest, I encourage people to do. I always say you want to have different streams of income because we're all in industry cycles. So some industries you'll see, just like real estate, it starts to go down and then other industries are flourishing, whether it's the medical, technology, stocks, whatever, right? So if we have a diversified portfolio and we have money invested in different things, then, we can expect that when one industry is down, the other one could be flourishing and it makes up for those downfalls. So I always encourage clients to diversify. For me, passive income, I love real estate. We're in California, and as you know, California is very expensive to buy your first rental property in if you don't have a lot of money. So what I did, because I was searching it, is I copy clients. If you're my client and you're making good money, I want to know what the heck you're doing. And Smart. 99% of the time, clients are more than happy to share what their strategies are. And then let's say the next client comes in and they're like, I'm really looking for a way that I can make some money. I'm like, well, look, I know a client who's making money this way. If you're interested, I can connect you and you guys can, go make money together or whatever. So I kept doing that. And then one day I was like, I want to make money. Why do I keep doing this? And I want to make money, right? So the light bulb went off. And so what I did is I asked one of my clients, I'm like, hey, I really want to get into real estate. I don't have a lot of money, but, I have some money that I've saved. Can you please help me figure out a way that I can buy my first rental property? And he goes, oh, you have a lot of money. And I was like, doesn't seem like a lot of money. He goes, yeah, not in California, but I'll connect you to my real estate agent in Ohio and you can buy your first rental property in Ohio. And so I was like, that is super cool. So he connected me to his Ohio guy. And I bought my first rental in Ohio for the down payment was $17,000. So the property cost $70,000. This was 4 years ago. It cost 70 grand and my down payment was $17,000. So I'm like, that's it. And he's like, yeah. And so the whole process was smooth. It was great. They managed the property for me and started cash flowing day one. I think I made $350 a month on it. It was like amazing. I was like, this was easy. Can I do it again? So I did it again. And so I told clients, I'm like, I have property now and it's in Ohio and it's cash flowing and all this stuff. So guess what? That spread like, wildfire. And so clients wanted more. But I was like, we can't all own in Ohio. Like,
right. We're not going to be able to afford it if everyone.
I'm like, what if there's an earthquake and there's no earthquake? Well, you know what I mean? What if there's a natural disaster and all of a sudden all our doors go down, right? So I built a program. It's a membership program. And now we have teams in about 18 different states. And we literally connect them with teams that will buy and manage the properties for them. And so now if you, depending on how much money you want to invest and what states you want to be in, maybe you have relatives in Tennessee and you want your property in Tennessee, then we connect you to the Tennessee team and then they help you buy the property there and manage it for you. And, maybe it's cash flowing, maybe it's appreciation you're looking for, whatever your strategy is based on our discussions and stuff. Now clients get passive income through real estate. and they diversify their doors like they would diversify a stock portfolio. So they've got doors in, multiple states, and it could be Alabama, Mississippi, Nevada. And we have real estate properties in different places, which is kind of cool.
That's very cool. What are some of the trade-offs between taking that strategy where you actually directly own property in different states versus investing in a REIT that might spread out the risk? Maybe even if it's the same states, where you can invest in REITs that have appreciation focus, or some that are more on passive income.
Yes.
I know there's no right or wrong. There's just trade-offs. That's a saying I like. What are some of the trade-offs in your opinion?
So I always tell clients that we want to have a little bit of everything, right? We always want to own a little bit of everything. The reason I start with the actual building itself, for me, it was the Ohio property, a smaller investment, is because I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it's amazing when you read a good book, but when you put it into play, all of a sudden more of that book starts to make sense. More of what people are talking about start to make sense. REITs make more sense, right? And so REITs are very passive. And so I tell clients, it's like, you want to understand how those work and what all goes into play. So you can't just say, well, I don't want to manage a property, or I don't like to, if you've never done it. Clients always tell me that. I'm like, you've never done it, so you don't know what it's like. I do taxes for a living. I'm a tax planning strategist. I'm a geek, and I read books on taxes. I don't worry about my Ohio properties. That's what I have my people doing. So to me, it's passive, right? But clients think that they're getting phone calls every day that the plumbing is breaking or that something's happening, and not necessarily is that true. And so I tell clients it's important that you understand how each tool can be utilized and benefits from you. So REITs is somebody else managing this portfolio of property, because it could be commercial, it could be anything, right? Inside. So if we all wanted to chip in and buy like the shopping center down the street, well, that's what a REIT would do, because you only need to chip in X amount of dollars to own a portion of that big building. And with real estate, you own the entire building, so you're responsible for 100% of it. But you also get the rewards of it, 100% of it. You can do 1031 exchanges. You could do more with it. So I explain to clients all of their options, and then they will decide which one they want to start to play with, which one do they want to learn more, what fits their goals, their needs, and then we rock and roll with that one. So
you rock and roll with it. I like that. And on direct ownership, Sugey, what are the write-off differences between that and a REIT, generally speaking?
Yeah. So obviously when you talk about REITs, you're going to get a form that says, okay, this is your actual net profit, what you have to report. They've already taken into account all expenses and all that. You're not going to be able to take any additional deductions other than whatever it is that they report, because it's so passive. When it comes to my own properties, for example, in December for Christmas, I actually finally went to go see the properties. I had never seen them in 3 years. But I finally flew out to Ohio to view the properties. I had a vacancy and I wanted to walk the building. I was getting, the kitchen was getting, touched up. And so I was like, I'm going to go for the weekend. So I literally flew out there, got to, walk the property. I found out that it's going to be 100-year-old building. And I'm thinking 100 years, exactly what your eyebrows just did. Is it falling down, right? The falling apart. These buildings are made out of brick. You know what I mean? Like, these are not like houses that we are used to seeing. It was like sturdy. I think buildings back then were probably even sturdier than buildings nowadays. It had a base, it has a basement. So I literally got to go and really look at it, walk it through, and I got to write off my trip, because that's the purpose of this trip. And I got to go and view and walk the area. I got to know the community. Why do people want to be in Ohio, right? So I went to the downtown area. I went to the lake. I got to see everything. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot to do here, And so I got to write things off, like, for example, that trip. So I tell clients, it's like, if there's a specific place that you like to visit or travel to, those would be the main places that I would encourage you to own real estate, because you can take a portion of that trip as a write-off, because you're going to go visit your properties as well while you're there. So For example, Nashville. Who wouldn't want to go to Nashville?
Oh,
That's so fun.
I prefer a Nashville weekend to a Vegas weekend, but that's a different podcast.
I would agree. I fell in love with Nashville. Everybody laughs like, why Nashville? I was like, you don't get it. When you go, you'll know what I mean.
You'll never know how much you like a honky tonk till you walk in one in real life. Get some hot
It's a
chicken.
lot of
It's a good
fun.
time.
Yes,
It's a lot
the
of fun.
wings.
Well, I mean, speaking of enjoying yourself, you when you're a tax preparer, Suhei, we're kind of a workaholic.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you were eventually able to let go and kind of relinquish to some control to others.
Mhm.
How did that change you as a person and a businesswoman?
Big change. Unfortunately, it wasn't because one day I woke up and I said, okay, I work too much, it was devastating. I lost, my kid's father passed away.
Oh.
We were going through a separation, and literally a month after we separated, he passed away. So a lot of guilt flooded me because I remember him wanting me to be home, for dinner, or wanting me to be home and just watch TV with him. That's not my personality, period. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of differences when the logic part of me comes in, is like, no, there was a lot of other things that were happening that caused the separation.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of that, I also realized that the business did consume a lot of my time, and I wanted to change that, but I didn't know how. So when I was dealing with all of the guilt and helping my kids go through the process of losing their dad, I stepped away from the business, and I literally told my sisters, just close it. Like, I don't care. Like, I really don't want to work right now. I want to be in a closet somewhere locked up. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the team stepped up. The team took over. We had put a lot of processes in place that were never 100% ready to my liking, and I never really utilized them. Well, when I stepped away, they put them into play. They did all the stuff. My sisters, they're my business partners. The staff we had, everyone took over and made things work that I was preventing from working. So a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, we like to wear multiple hats, and nothing is ever going to be as good as if we do it, right?
Sure.
And so I realized
Control
how
freaks.
controlling I was.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was like, I'm not controlling. Well, I realized how controlling I really was. And so it caused this tragedy, caused me to step out and take time for me, for my healing and my kids. But it allowed the business to really hang on to really good processes, the really good team I had, my staff. I learned to trust them. And so now I'm happy to say, like, I leave at 5:00, like 5:00 hits, and I'm like, when I used to work for somebody else, I'm out of here.
I'm driving a Solvang. Yeah, I got stuff to do.
Exactly. But it's nicer. And so now I encourage other business owners to really put processes into place, because sometimes, a staff member may quit. You may not be feeling well. Maybe you just need time to regroup. And you don't want the business to fail while you're gone. You want the business to continue to flourish. If an employee leaves you, you want the business to continue to, keep going. So processes, nobody takes them. The processes stay. And when you build a really good foundation with those kind of methods in place, then, people come and go, and the company continues to grow. So that was my biggest lesson.
Yeah, the company can persevere, and it's got to be so freeing, when you can just kind of let go of some of this. Well, that's a perfect example of, in tragedies, sometimes we see the best in people.
Yeah.
And that's, wow.
Well, I tell people not to wait till something like that happens, because it can happen at any time and with anything. But the saddest thing, when a client comes to me and says, I'm looking for a new preparer because mine passed away at their desk. It's like, do you know how many I should probably look statistically to see how many tax preparers pass away at their desk. It's not the first time I hear it. And I'm like, I don't want to be that way.
That's not how I want to go out. Yeah. God, no.
So that's definitely why I had to also change.
Well, good for you. You've done a lot of impressive things in your career. What are you most proud of?
Gosh, I'm definitely going to say when I took the leap of faith with my sisters to open up the business. working for someone else, you're working someone else's dream. Nothing wrong with that. Some people, they're okay with that. But when I realized that no matter what I did, it was always going to be that someone else's dream that I was, working so hard for and giving up the time with my family for, I took the leap of faith of starting our own business. And now I think that's I'm just so proud of the fact of what we have built, how happy we are with it, and where it's going. So I want to say definitely starting our business was the biggest, I don't know, the biggest accomplishment.
You hung a shingle and you went for it. I
Yeah.
love it. Sugey, what are you most optimistic about?
Gosh, in business, I feel that no matter what we want, if we really work hard at it, we can make it flourish. We can make it turn around. And I want to say that I'm looking forward to where we're taking this. I want the whole tax industry to change. I feel that it's, when I say it's broken, I feel like a lot of clients don't know what all goes into that tax return, what it's saying about them, how that you can utilize it a little bit more. And I would love to see that change. I would love to see people really have a better understanding of, of their tax filings and not just do them because they have to do them and they're rushed to do them, but I think it's a few years before we see that.
Okay. Well, where can people learn more about you, what you're up to, if they want to reach out? Where can we funnel these people, Sugey?
Yeah, so we're very active on our social media. You can always look us up on Instagram, which is prominence.services, or our website, which is prominencebusiness.com.
Well, Sugey Piedra, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to have you back.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.